Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's basement of horror. Today we're going to talk about the Hodag. What's a Hodag? Well, it's a stocky reptilian monster with stubby legs and a long tail and spikes on its back and spikes going along its tail and two horns like a bull and kind of a frog-like head with fangs, claws. It's all black in some reports and all green in other reports. And this creature lives in the woods of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is this creature real? No. It's not exactly a cryptid. It's not like Bigfoot or Nessie or Yeti. It's often referred to as a cryptid, but really it's more a matter of folklore. It's a legend. It's a mix of folklore and fiction. But then, aren't most monsters a mix of folklore and fiction? I think they are. That doesn't make them illegitimate. If a monster had to be real to be interesting, well, we'd have nothing to talk about. So, if you've never heard of the Hodag, it's a long story. Where could I start? I'm going to hopefully put some links in the description to some videos that can go into the Hodag in more detail than I intend to do here. If I forget to put those links in the description, let me know and I'll correct it. I'll put them in there. But let me turn to some notes here. The Hodag. This creature originated as a tall tale told by lumberjacks in logging camps. There are conflicting stories about what sort of monster those old tales described. It probably didn't look like the modern idea of a Hodag. Some historians and folklorists also believe that the Native American spiritual being called the water panther, or Mishipishu, could also have something to do with Hodag legends. There are pictographs of Mishipishu that look a lot like the modern idea of a Hodag, this four-legged creature with horns and spikes along its back. The reason we're still talking about the Hodag today is because of a man named Eugene Simeon Shepard. Eugene Shepard. In 1893, he wrote a newspaper column for the New North regional paper in Wisconsin, in which he described capturing a Hodag. Now, at this point, apparently there were stories about Hodags and Hodag hoaxes and capturing Hodags, so he didn't invent this. It was already in the culture at the time, but he's the guy who popularized it. He wrote this column about capturing a Hodag, and it included an illustration that came to define what a Hodag looks like. And this story caught people's imagination. He wrote additional stories about life with this captive Hodag, in which he described feeding it white bulldogs and trying to hatch Hodags out of Hodag eggs. He tried to create a hatchery and raise Hodags. It was a succession of tall tales getting wilder and wilder as he described his life with this captured Hodag. And these stories, in a 19th century sense, they went viral. This is how things went viral back then. These stories were published from coast to coast, and they became, maybe it's hyperbole to say a sensation, but they were very popular. They attracted a lot of interest. And people thought it was real. People thought these stories were real. In 1896, Shepard began exhibiting a live hodag at county fairs and festivals all around the region. He had a tent set up that was really dark, and you had to pay admission fee, and you only had a minute or so in that tent, not much time, and then you were escorted out. You went in there, and it was like a pen or something that he had set up. I think there were some curtains. It was real dark. You couldn't see, and this thing moved around and made noises, and people thought it was a real hodag. And they got scared and ran out, and people would line up to see this exhibit. And this exhibit became very famous. His original stories became famous and ignited all this interest. But then this live exhibit really took off, and people came from all over to see the live hodag captured. In reality, it was a puppet. He and some friends were operating this hodag puppet. I think it was made of a log with animal hides and real horns, and they had controls that made it move around, and I think its mouth opened, and I don't know how they did the noises, but they had some way of producing noises, and it was so dark, and then people were in there for only a minute or so. They moved them along quickly, so they didn't have time to really figure out what they were looking at, and people thought it was real. You would think they would see that it was a fake like that, but this is the 1890s. People were not as jaded as they are now. They hadn't seen it all. They didn't have the media or social media. It was a little harder to discern what you were looking at if you had never seen anything like that before. So people thought this was real. And then the Smithsonian and other legitimate institutions took interest, and they wanted to come study the hodag. So when it attracted that kind of attention, that's when Gene Shepard knew he really needed to come clean. This has gone too far. So he admitted, yeah, sorry, it's a hoax. It's not real. He admitted it was just a puppet, and he'd made the whole thing up. But it had become so popular by then that it didn't matter. People still lined up and paid money to come see the fake hodag, because by this point, it was so famous, it didn't matter if it was real or not. Okay, so before it was a famous live creature, now it's a famous hoax. Either way, it's something famous. People wanted to come see it. And in fact, Shepard had been working with the local business community because the lumber industry had collapsed, and they needed something to replace the money that the lumber industry had provided. That was the life's blood of the town, and that was gone, and they needed a new way to make money. So Shepard worked with them to come up with basically a scheme, a marketing scheme, and this is what he came up with. And it succeeded beyond anyone's wildest imagination. 100 years later, Rhinelander is still the home of the hodag. Everywhere you go through that town, you see hodag everywhere. Everything is named hodag. Every business is hodag this, hodag that. There's statues of hodags all over. The Chamber of Commerce has a huge, giant hodag statue in front of the building, and tourists come and take pictures in front of it. There's a museum. I think it's a logging museum, but it's also a hodag museum, and it's got all the vintage hodag sculptures that were made over the years. Not exactly hoaxes, but they were used for publicity photos and whatnot. It has artifacts related to the hodag legend. And then there's the Hodag store, which is a gift store just devoted to the hodag. There's a high school that adopted the hodag as its mascot. There's a sports stadium with the hodag on the side. There's a big country music festival named after the Hodag. There's big sporting events that draw people from all over that are named after the Hodag. So it's a big deal in that town. Everyone around there grows up with the Hodag on their mind. And the legend of the Hodag, it kind of reminds me of something local to the St. Louis area. Across the river in Illinois, in Alton, there's something called the Piasaw bird. And that's a creature I'm very interested in. I've been working on a documentary about the Piasaw. I started on this documentary in the 1990s. And I still have some of the footage I shot for it back then. I've digitized it. And in recent years, I've shot new footage and I've interviewed several people. And I need several more interviews. This is a long, ongoing project. I don't know when it's going to be finished, but I'm working on this. I have been working on this documentary about the Piasaw bird. And it's a monstrous creature that was drawn on the side of a bluff in Alton, Illinois, hundreds of years ago. And today it's much like the Hodag. It's the mascot of the town. It's part of the town's cultural identity. But also like the Hodag, the modern idea of the Piasaw is basically a hoax. It's fiction. It comes from a short story. We know who wrote the story. We know the author. There's no question. It's a fictional story. But people believed it was real. This picture on the bluff was real. It doesn't exist anymore. It was dynamited away. But it was real. It was a pictograph, probably an image of a water panther. So there's the connection to the Hodag. Both the Hodag and the Piasaw might have been inspired by the same Native American spiritual being, the water panther. Let me see if I can attempt to pronounce the name of this water panther. Mishipishu. Did I do all right? Anyone out there who's Native American? Just like the Rhinelanders a few minutes ago, now they're pounding their computers. So that's not how you pronounce it. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. So there's that link between the Hodag and the Piasaw bird, both possibly stemming from the same Native American being, from images on the sides of cliffs, translated, appropriated by white men who wrote fictional stories that were taken as reality and became tourist attractions and then became the identity of the town. So it's a very similar phenomenon in both cases. Now, Eugene Shepard, who started this Hodag hoax, was very knowledgeable about Native American culture and spoke multiple Native American languages. So it's not a situation where it's far-fetched that he would have known about the water panther. He almost undoubtedly knew about the water panther. He surely knew about it because he was steeped in Native American lore, Native American culture, and spent time with Native Americans learning about their culture. So it's not far out at all to think he might have gotten inspiration from that. With the Piasaw, there's more debate about where the inspiration for that came from. Well, let's start showing you something. This is a book that was very important to me in my childhood. Monsters, Giants, and Little Men from Mars by Daniel Cohen. Monsters, Giants, and Little Men from Mars, An Unnatural History of the Americas. Look at this creepy guy on the cover. He's cute. I like him. And I got this, not this very same copy, but I would check out this book from my school library all the time. Multiple times per year, I would check this out of the school library. And this is the edition that I had. That's why I bought this as an adult, because this is like the one I read as a kid. Now, I don't think I ever owned it. Well, I take that back. I think yes, I did own it later but it was a later edition with a paperback cover, and it looked different. Contents were the same, but it didn't give me the same feeling as this does, because this looks like the one that I saw as a kid. This is like the one that I would check out of the school library. And this book talks about, of course, Bigfoot and all kinds of other monsters. And let's see, where's the Hodag? Aha, here we go. This is where I learned about the Hodag. That is a Hodag. That's a picture of a Hodag. So this book talked about the Hodag, and I saw that photo. And this photo captured my imagination. I looked at that and I thought, well, it must be real. I mean, there's a picture of it right there. And as I recall, I mean, I'm not going back over it and reading it exactly right now, but as I recall, the book was sort of vague on whether the Hodag was a real thing or not. I mean, whether it was supposed to be real or not. So I came away with this idea that just maybe this Hodag was real, and this photo showed a Hodag. There it was. I mean, it must be something to it. There's a photo. Especially if these photos were taken way back, way back when. They didn't have the technology to create special effects back then. So I was very fascinated with that Hodag and wondering if in fact there was such a thing. And I made a little toy Hodag made of kneaded erasers. Not kneaded as in I need it, kneaded as in it's pliable. These stretchy rubber erasers, and they still make them. But you could sculpt things out of these erasers. You could twist it and pull it until it got real soft, and you could form it into shapes, and then it would stiffen up, and you have like a rubber toy. I made a lot of rubber toys that way. I don't know how I caught on to that. I've never heard of anyone else making little rubber toys out of those things. But I did as a kid. I did that a lot. So I would do like a wire armature or foil or whatever. Then I'd do these kneaded erasers and form the skin over it. And so now I had like a rubbery skin. And then I'd paint them, and that gave it more stability. So I made a little Hodag. It was black, and it had the spikes. It looked just like that picture. The only thing was, in that picture, it wasn't clear how many horns he had on his head, so I gave him one, like a rhino or a unicorn, when in fact he has two. I didn't realize that, so I gave him one. That was the only error. Everything else was like that picture. It was a very nice little replica of a Hodag. And I played with that. My adventure people would go hunting the Hodag and surround him and capture him and cage him, and he'd get away. And I had little Hodag adventures. If I'd had some of the stuff I'm about to show you, that would have enriched my playtime, that's for sure. But I didn't know that there were any Hodag souvenirs or anything like that out there. I never heard of such a thing. And at that time, without the internet, they would have been very difficult for me to get my hands on in any case. So let's look at some things here. I don't know how these are going to show up on the camera. We might not spend that much time on these because they might be hard to see. Let's see what we can do here. These are postcards. So I spread them out while you were not watching, just so I could see the dates on all these postcards. Now this one, this is 1949. Look at that cute little guy. Well, I like the way that they depict him. It's in a more cartoonish way, and he's kind of scared. He's not, he's not that ferocious. I like that. So this is one of my favorite ones. I really like the way the Hodag is depicted. Very cute. And this one is 1941. I'm going by the postmark on these things. So 1941 for this guy. That's how far back. Well, they go back much further than that, but that's how. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a recent thing or 1990s thing. It's ongoing, of course, today, but this goes back quite a ways. Obviously the 19th century, but I mean the merchandising, the promotion of it goes back a long time. Now this guy doesn't have a date. I have a couple here with no dates. This is just an image of Rhinelander, just, you know, sites around town, but you can see how the Hodag is central to the identity of the place. And there's some big signs that look like that one in the middle there, where he's kind of crawling downward like that, coming at you. No date on this one either, but that's a really cute Hodag. And that's more like the original puppet that Jean Shepherd used. It looked more like that. I've seen pictures that are supposed to be pictures of that puppet. It burned in a fire. I think it was in the 1930s. So we don't have it today, but it looked something like that. It was elongated and kind of like a log. That's obviously carved out of a log right there. And that's kind of what his looked like, only had hides over it. This one is from 1959. Again, this is sort of promoting the place as much as the Hodag itself. This does not have a date, but this is a classic image of the Hodag, like the one in that Daniel Cohen book. That's the same image, I believe. Here's another example of it, but I think I've got a date on this one. Or do I? No, I guess I don't. I like how it says, Hodag found near Rhinelander, Wisconsin, now extinct. That's the image from the Monsters, Giants, and Little Men from Mars book. And that's one of the older images of the Hodag. One of the most iconic ones. This is probably the most famous image of the Hodag. This is the capture of the Hodag. And this is, obviously, it's a staged image. And that's, of course, a fake Hodag. And I don't know if, at this point, if people thought this image was real. Because this was taken some years after the event was supposed to have happened. So I don't know if this was presented as an actual picture of the capture, or if it was always intended as a reenactment. Jean Shepherd is, I think he's one of these people on this side. He's in there somewhere. And interestingly, there was an episode of Scooby-Doo, not the 70s or 60s one, but it was 2012, and it had the Hodag in it. And Jean Shepherd was a character in the episode. So it had Jean Shepherd as himself, and he had a captured Hodag, and the Hodag got loose. I've only seen clips. I haven't seen the whole episode, but it's interesting. It made it into Scooby-Doo. And also, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them has a Hodag in it. So it's part of the Harry Potter universe. This is another edition of the same card, a little different. It's a little zoomed in slightly, doesn't have the same borders. But this is one of the most iconic images of the Hodag. Those last two I showed you, the capture and then the standing there by itself by the log. This was an old one, wasn't it? Oh, this is the same as one we've already seen. We'll show it again there. That's that iconic Hodag image, but this one's colorized. A primitive kind of colorization, not like not like what you do now with a computer. Let's see here. There's got to be a date on this. All this writing and no date. There it is, 1970. That, I think that's made of fiberglass. This sculpture, the Hodag, still exists, and you can see this Hodag in Rhinelander, and I think it's in the Logging Museum. So this card is from 1970, and we've seen that same sculpture on at least one other card so far. It shows up on a lot of cards. These are postcards, remember. Okay, here's that same creature, same sculpture. Again, probably the most well-known today, the most well-known sculpture. Well, I guess the most well-known is the one in front of the Chamber of Commerce, but if you're talking about vintage sculptures, that's the iconic one that still exists. And here he is again. No date on this one. Same sculpture, but more in profile. If you go to Rhinelander, you can find postcards like this. I don't know what the current ones are. Now, the Hodag that they have today, like all the promotional stuff, first of all, it's green because the high school official colors are green and white. That's so they made the Hodag green on everything. And it looks more cartoony, and the modern merchandise looks like that. It looks like that Hodag. And I like the more gothic, black, creepy-looking Hodag from the 19th century and the early 20th century. But that's how the kind of like Krampus. There's a Krampus. Postcards are a big part of the Hodag mythology, keeping it alive, popularizing it. Much like Krampus, I have a collection of vintage Krampus postcards in this box. Even older than the Hodag ones, but going back some decades older than that. European cards. Postcards were a big deal once upon a time. They still are, but in terms of popularizing myths and creatures and local legends and things like that, postcards have played a big part in that. Okay, let's look at some other things. We'll set this over here. I got a big box full of Hodag. All right. Ooh, dust. All right, what am I gonna do here? Oh, got some big things. Oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? Okay, well, let's just start with this. I don't think this is as, well, I know it's not as old as some of the other things I want to show you. It's got the more modern green colors, for one thing. That's one way to know. This is a plush Hodag. Look at that goofy thing. I don't know. It doesn't have a date on it. I don't know when that's from. It looks kind of old, though. I mean, more recent Hodag items they're made differently. This is more crude. It's almost like a carnival prize. That's probably what it is. It probably was like county fairs. Probably still have festivals and county fairs. And I mean, I know they got that big country music festival and all these other events with their Hodag theme, so they probably have a lot of festival type events where they might have games and things where this would be a good prize. That's a big stuffed Hodag, so he's cool. Big old stuffed Hodag. I think that's the biggest Hodag item I've got, but it's a little newer than some of the other stuff. I don't think I have any really contemporary Hodag items. So I don't have any of the big green grinning, like the Chamber of Commerce sculpture. I don't have anything like that. All the modern stuff looks like that. Well, there's one kind of classic style bobblehead that I saw online that harkens back to the old style, but most of that modern stuff has that green mascot look. Let's see what this is. This must be another, yeah, this is another modern one. So this is what the modern stuff looks like. This is a modern Hodag. Really cute, but contemporary. This is what all the contemporary merchandise looks like. He's cute. So I have him. I've got that big one. I don't have the statues and the bobbleheads and t-shirts and all that stuff. I don't really like the modern style Hodag very much. I like the older Hodag, so let's keep going. We'll get to some of that. Of course, I don't even know exactly what I've got. Let's see here. It's gonna be a mess. Very disorganized. Okay. Ooh, that's a big one. Got my army of Hodags. What's this one? Okay. All right. Oh, here's a, what is this, a swizzle stick or? Yeah, it must be for drinks. Like a stir. All kinds of weird stuff like that. Here is Ripple's Rhinelander paper. It's like a industrial company publication, but there's an interesting picture in it. And I thought there were postcards with this image, but I don't, maybe there aren't. So here's this book. It's just like a company publication. In and of itself, nothing to write home about, but it has this photo in it. When was this photo taken? Yeah, I want to say in the 1950s. It doesn't say. But this was a recreation of that other photo. You know, I showed you that picture of the capture of the Hodag, where it's staged and they're all standing around pretending to capture the Hodag. This is a recreation with a lot of the town leaders, like elected officials, business people, you know, big people about town, posing in a recreation of that image, capturing the Hodag. And the story of how he was captured is funny. He was in a Gene Shepard story about it. He found the Hodag in a hole, and he used chloroform and dragged it out. And then there's another version of the story where he uses dynamite, blasts it. It's strange. A lot of odd stories. Escalating tall tales. All right, this is a tourist publication, like things to do in Rhinelander. See and do, Rhinelander, Wisconsin, home of the Hodag. It's just a little brochure. Oh, look at that Hodag. Home of the Hodag. See, that's the kind of Hodag I like. That's a nice, creepy Hodag. That's what I like. That's my idea of a Hodag. When I think of a Hodag, it looks like that. Oh, we're back to the crinkly paper again. Okay. This is an image of a famous, well, I was going to say a famous bar. Sounds like a shopping center. not the retail store famous bar. This is a picture of a bar that was famous. And it had this Hodag on top of it. Now, I'm assuming that must be what this is, because I know that there was a bar that was very famous, and it had a two-dimensional cutout Hodag on the roof, and that was a landmark in the area. And the building, I don't know if they tore it down or if they turned it into something else, but the Hodag had to come off the top, but they saved it, and it's at the logging museum. It's outside the museum. So that, if this is what I think it is, then that still exists, but you can see how big it is. Oh, so that's an interesting little artifact of the history of Rhinelander. Let's see, patches. The police department has, oh, there we go, has Hodags on their, you know, their uniforms, their badges, etc. I imagine their police cars probably have Hodag on it. Here's a 1965 Hodag snowmobile competition. World's largest snowmobile marathon, 1971. That's a cute little Hodag. So, cute little Hodag. Critters. Okay. So several of these now are very similar. I don't think I don't need to take all of these out. Oh boy, how many of these do I have? Okay, so John Sol, is that how you pronounce that? Jonsol. They made these whiskey decanters shaped like a Hodag. And they made male and female versions. And I have, for some strange reason, oh, this just came off of it. I don't like that. Oh well. So I've got several of these. How I ended up with so many, I don't know. Let me see if I can try to... What are the best ones to show you? Well, that one, that little sticker just fell right off. I don't like it when that happens. Can't even handle these things. Okay. Well, this one already has its stickers off. I think someone's glued its head. That's a whiskey decanter. I'll narrow down which one's male and which one's female in a second. Once I looked at them all, I think I can figure that out. I tried to get Billy up here. He was on the edge of the table, but he wouldn't jump up. Here's another one. I want to say that's the male. Here he is again. He's cute. These are cute little Hodags. I like these things. Guess I got one more, and I got two more. Oh, wait a minute, what's this one? Okay, that's something different. Okay. This is unused. Unless, of course, so you can see that's never been used. He's cute. Or maybe she's cute, I don't know. And that other one, this thing fell off. What does that say anyway? I want to identify which one's male, which one's female. So this is the female. Okay. So now which one's male? This one's male. Okay. All right. That's the male Hodag. This is very important that you know the difference. That is a male Hodag. And this is a female Hodag. Know your Hodags. That's a female. When were these made? I don't know. Let's see here. 1976. Bicentennial. So these were made for the bicentennial year, 1976. What does a Hodag have to do with the bicentennial? I don't know. I do not have the answer to that. But these are bicentennial items. So, if I had had one of these, or both male and female, as a kid, I would have used these instead of the one that I made. But I had fun with the one I made. All right, let's put these over here. Now this is a little different. Is there a date on this? Hand blown. This is a hand-blown glass Hodag. He's made of glass. So I'm a little concerned about dropping him. I don't know when he was made. I don't think he's old, but I could be wrong. could be very wrong. But I think he's a more recent creation, but I don't know. I don't remember anything about how I got him. And most of this stuff was eBay, but I'm not sure about that one. All right, so getting to the good stuff yet, or I think that's another. That's the Jim. That's another John Saul. Yeah, that's the one with the head detached. And that's John Saul too, right? Or not? No, it's not. Yeah, it is. Let's get the John Sauls out of the way. The whiskey decanters. This is like how the show used to be. When I just didn't know what I was doing. And going through a bunch of boxes. Okay. People who've been watching us a long time will recognize this. This is a lot like how the early shows were. Sometimes we revert back to that primitive stage. Okay, what have I got here? This is a souvenir Hodag. I thought I had more of these. Ooh, he's nice. Ooh. Is he chalkware? Listen to that. That sounds nice. Okay, these are all very fragile, so I gotta be very careful. Now that's a Hodag. Look at him. Ooh, I like him. Look at that sculpt. Yeah, he is a cool Hodag. I like his pose, dragging this leg like that. He's loping forward towards you. What does that say? Rhinelander, home of the Hodag, Wisconsin. Yeah, that's a nice Hodag. I like him. That's what I call a Hodag. That's a real Hodag. That's a Hodag's Hodag. Okay, this one's a little smaller. Oh, he's cute. Oh. He's numbered 50 out of 477. Boy, if I drop one of these, there's not going to be anything left. Oh, he's cute. Look at that. Look at him. You see how it incorporates almost cow-like or bull-like features with dinosaur characteristics. It's this mix of different animals. It's got a little horn, kind of like a stinger at the tip of its tail. It mixes different animals together. Some descriptions say it has the head of a frog, but I guess I kind of see it in some illustrations, but that looks like a cow, or a bull. particularly the ears. Those horns with the ears right below them. It's been described as dinosaur-like, reptilian, but then it's hairy. It's got, so in those sculptures, these things don't really depict it with hair. It doesn't have like a hairy sculpture texture on it. But a hodag, like an authentic hodag, would have hair, but it's never really shown that way. The original description said it was hairy. It was like a reptilian body, but with hair. All right, let's get this guy out. Ooh, he's heavy. Oh, big one. This is a little different. Oh, he's very similar to that smaller one we saw, but he's much bigger. But I bet it's the same sculptor, same artist. Okay. Oh, I like his feet. They're very big with lots of claws. Okay, and then here he is. He's got a lot more detail. Look at the inside of his ears, and other facial details are, they're more carefully painted, more color. He's cool. I like his big claws. He has a much more detailed paint job, paint application. Or what do the industry people say? Colorway. He has a nice colorway. What in the heck does that even mean? Colorway, good grief. And he's even got some painted texture down there. Yeah, he's a more deluxe one. I like this guy. Yeah, he's cool. I like him. Okay, I say that a lot, don't I? Okay, 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 okay. Okay, okay. You should take a drink every time I say okay. Just rewind this to the beginning. And every time I say okay, take a drink. Okay. Last one. Ooh, some water damage in this box, but this is the box that it would have come in. Like I assume this would be in a gift shop, and it's probably would have one on display on a shelf, and you'd say, I want that one. And they reach under the counter and they pull out this, only without the water stain. And then inside the box, it's got this. And it has, well, it's got the remnants of some string that probably wrapped around what I just showed you to hold that covering on it. And it's got this little booklet. Don't let the Hodag scare you. This book about the legend of the Hodag and information about Rhinelander. Rhinelander, Wisconsin is a wonderful city. And it talks about what is the Hodag. There's only one place in the world where you can see a Hodag, and that's in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. What is a hodag? Just the fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor-sharp claws on this earth, that's all. And he's as real to the people of Rhinelander as grease-proof paper, and that's pretty real in Rhinelander, as we'll show you later on. And it goes on. This folds out, and this has a whole history of the hodag. Is this sealed? I've never taken this out. Yeah, it's not. It doesn't want to go. Is there a picture? I don't think there's any pictures. It just looks like text. Yeah, I don't know. It's not coming out easily, so I'm not going to force it. All right. I think this is similar to one of the other ones I've shown you, but this one is all in its original state. Yeah, it's very similar, if not the same, as one I already showed you. But this one's interesting just because it's got all the stuff with it. And that's a similar design, I think, to the last two we saw. Essentially the same. But this one's cool because it's got the box, it's got the paperwork, it's got the cushion wrapped around it, it's got all that stuff. So it's like what it would have been at the store, at the gift shop when you originally bought it. And I think that's it. I think that's all my hodags. You know, I think I need more hodags. I thought I had more. But it seems like half my collection is made up of those whiskey decanters. I surely need a few more hodags. And I've seen a few that I don't have. I've missed out on some on eBay. Believe it or not, there was a time when these things would go for big bucks. I don't think they go for that anymore. I don't think there's the same demand anymore. But some years ago, when I started collecting this stuff, there was a demand. There were other people trying to get them, so it wasn't easy collecting them. But I think it's calmed down. I don't think there's much of a demand anymore. Whatever was going on in the culture a dozen years ago or more, I think it's calmed down now. How do I do this? There we go. All right. But some of these I had to pay up for. Probably more than what I would have to spend today to get them. Certainly more than what I could sell them for. I think what happened was it just became a lot easier to get hodags because of all the modern stuff. There's all kinds of bobbleheads I haven't showed you because I don't own them. They're too new. But I think all of this stuff, there wasn't a lot of that 15 years ago. Not like this, but now it's so prevalent and so easy to get these new hodags. I think that it's just not as unique anymore to own hodag stuff. But I still think the old ones are unique. And there's some that I've seen over the years that I've missed out on. Some really scary looking ones that I'd like to get. if I ever see him. So I still have a little bit of Hodag collecting in front of me, potentially. I don't think I'm completely finished with it. I'd like to go to Rhinelander someday. That would be nice. Look around. See those museums. Maybe I'll see a Hodag. There we go. We are done. I don't know what you thought of that episode. I think there's going to be a lot of edits in that episode. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed traveling into the world of the Hodag. Seeing all these little Hodags and the postcards and all that information. I'm sure that was exciting, but you had to understand the background before I start showing you these little trinkets, this goofy little monster. Like, what is that? Well, now you know. I don't know if this is going to be up before Christmas. I think so. I think it should be. I'm planning on uploading this a week before Christmas, but I could be late. Things, I could have things to do and not get it up, but hopefully you'll be seeing this before Christmas. And this might be the last one you do see before Christmas. So if that's the case, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, have a Happy New Year. Thank you for watching since October. And if you've been watching all these years, well, thank you for watching all these years. Thank you very much. And I will see you in the new year. Until then, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.